So this second box is basically some of the more prominent names in RPGs, in my opinion. Some Metal Max, Dragon Quest, Shin Megami Tensei, Ogre Games, and Quintet Games. So, of course, not all of these are RPGs, but it just kind of made sense for me to organize them this way. So I'll start with the Quintet Games, with ActRaiser, and this is a game that I played a lot when I was maybe around 6 years old. Super Nintendo was the first console I had, and I remember playing Super Bomberman, Mario, and a lot of ActRaiser. And I'm not really sure what happened with my Super Nintendo. I probably sold it when I got a GameCube as I got older. But most of the time growing up, I wasn't really thinking about Super Nintendo games or old games very much. I was mostly playing Game Boy and some GameCube and whatnot. But eventually, when I was like 18 or 19, I started getting interested in old games again and downloaded some emulators. And I spent a lot of time searching for that game that I played so much as a kid, and I was really like out of the loop about old games since I hadn't followed them for so long, so I couldn't remember what the game was. And I don't know if you've ever had the experience where you have a childhood memory that was so long ago, if you're not sure if it was a dream or if it really happened. And so to me, that was this game. I wasn't even sure if it was real or not. But eventually I found a screenshot or a video or something of ActRaiser, and suddenly it blew my mind because I recognized that it was that game from my childhood. So I downloaded the ROM, and I think I spent all night playing ActRaiser that day, and it was great. And yeah, I still really love ActRaiser. It's a great game. This is Slapstick, another Quintet game. This was called Robo Trek outside of Japan, and it's an RPG where you can you sort of build and customize robots with different parts. Like you can have guns and swords and axes and shields and backpacks and everything. And it's got a system where you can combine different items to make new items and equipment. And so that's kind of fun to experiment with. And there's a lot of freedom in terms of how you can set up your robots. Although the game is very, very easy, so a lot of that customization, isn't all that rewarding when you can kind of cakewalk the game. But I actually enjoyed this one a fair bit. I just beat it the other day, actually. And yeah, it was pretty cool. Okay, so this is Tenshi Sawzall, also known as Terranigma, in other regions. I think this was Quintet's last game on the Super Famicom. It's an action RPG, and it's got a lot of themes of reincarnation and sort of Buddhist ideology and the cycle of life and death. And this game wasn't released. I think it was the only Quintet game that wasn't released in North America. Probably because some of those themes didn't really vibe with Nintendo of America. Although it did get a European release. And it's a funny story. I initially played this game about 4 years ago on emulator, and I got about 2/3 of the way through the game when I had a hard drive failure. So obviously I lost all my progress, and it wasn't until a few years later that I got this cartridge. And then this year, when the coronavirus pandemic hit, I was spending a lot of time playing Super Famicom games. So I finally played this game again and was able to finish it, and I really enjoyed it. Got a decent moveset for your character with like sliding attacks and jumping attacks and running attacks and stuff. The one thing that kind of bothers me about it is every level that you gain makes a really big difference in your damage output. So it's very easy to go from being underpowered and dealing 1 damage to everything to being, just the right power and things take, a few hits to kill, to being really overpowered and one-shotting everything. That span from underpowered to overpowered happens in just a few levels. So you have to be really careful that you fight enough that you're not underpowered, but not too much. Otherwise the game becomes too easy. And there's one boss that's way stronger than it should be for the point in the game that you fight it. So you kind of have to cheese it with magic unless you're over-leveled. But for the most part, I really enjoyed this game. Okay, what's that? Shin Megami Tensei games, SMT1, 2, and If. Now, of these, I've only played SMT1, which, to be honest, I didn't really like as much as the Famicom games. I felt like, compared to Megami Tensei 2 on the Famicom, the pacing was a lot worse, and they didn't really fix the gameplay. In fact, I think it has more gameplay problems than the Famicom games do. You can just auto-battle random encounters with guns 99% of the time, and you can stun lock bosses and stack buffs over and over until you deal a lot of damage. And stacking buffs was also a problem on the Famicom, but you would think they would learn from that mistake, and they didn't. It was the first Megami Tensei game where they added different routes for chaos and law and neutral, which is kind of cool, but the gameplay is just really, really boring and easy. Now, I've heard that SMT2 is better, and I've heard mixed opinions on If, but I'll play them at some point. I just haven't really been in the mood for a long dungeon crawler lately. Okay, Densetsu no Ogre Battle and Tactics Ogre. I haven't played either of these yet. They're games that I think I would really enjoy, but I tend to have a problem with games like that I think I'll enjoy. For whatever reason, I want to give them my full attention, and so I end up waiting until a period where I can really, really get absorbed in them. And in the meantime, I just play, casual stuff where I replay games a lot. Just playing Idolmaster 2 and Final Fantasy 13 over and over again instead of actually getting to the games I should play. So yeah, I haven't gotten to these yet. Dragon Quest 5, 6, and the remake of 3. These are all great games. Not a whole lot to say about them, I guess, since they're very popular, but I do have an interesting story about Dragon Quest 3. Now, I'd already played the NES and Famicom versions of 3, so I figured this time, if I'm playing the Super Famicom version, I'll do a solo run, and with just the hero to make it a little bit different. And so as I was playing, I was really, really surprised to discover that there's unique dialogue in the game if you play it with only the hero. When you beat the major bosses, I think they're Baramos and Zoma, maybe. I don't really remember the names. I don't pay attention to that stuff much, but anyway, after you beat the major bosses, the king will like congratulate you for doing it with only the hero, and you get he gives you like a special item after the first one. So I was so surprised. I've never played an RPG before that actually had special events programmed if you beat the game with only one character. So that was really, really cool. And it's a pretty decent game for a solo challenge. This version is probably easier to do it than the Famicom version, because they added some multi-target weapons like boomerangs that just hit all the enemies. So random encounters are a lot easier to deal with only one character. Yeah, but Dragon Quest is awesome. Okay, finally, Metal Max 2 and Metal Max Returns. Now, I love Metal Max games. I think like half my channel is just Metal Max challenge run videos. I've got some tankless Metal Max 2 stuff on my channel. I got a solo Metal Max 2 final boss thing on my channel. And, well, I love doing challenge runs in these games in particular, but yeah, they're awesome. They're really open, non-linear RPGs where you can hunt down wanted outlaws and collect the bounties on their heads, and you kind of build and customize tanks to fight the outlaws with. So I kind of consider Metal Max games to be sort of like boss rush RPGs, because you don't really have to. There's not a lot of events in the game, like cutscenes and quests that you're forced to do. They mainly just give you a big open world with a lot of bosses to fight, and you earn the vast majority of your money by defeating outlaws, and so you can use that to fund your tank building and whatnot. So really, you're just going around fighting bosses all the time, and I love that about them. Now, Returns is a remake of the first Metal Max game on the Famicom, and I actually prefer the original version. I'm not really fond of some of the changes they made in Returns, like the damage variance is very, very large in terms of the minimum and maximum random damage, and they added key cards that you need to use to get past some blockades in different areas. So it feels somewhat more restrictive than the original, although they also added a subway system underground that lets you travel around different. So anyway, it's got pros and cons, and some people prefer Returns, some people prefer the original. They did add more tank customization options and more weapons with unique effects to them, which is cool. So I think if you're going to get into Metal Max, you should play both the original and Returns, and see which one you prefer, I guess. 2 also had a remake on the DS, which is my favorite in the series, Metal Max 2 Returns, although the original is also really, really good. It does have a few issues in the late game with balancing. Like critical hits are really, really strong, and the dog always dies in the boss fights, always. But yeah, Metal Max is like possibly my favorite game series. So if you haven't played these games, you should definitely check them out. And that's gonna be it for this video. I'll be back with more next time. Take care.